There are many motorcycle museums all over the country, but when you talk about motocross motorcycles, a few names keep coming up. Number one is Tom White. Tom White discovered his lifelong passion for motorcycles at an early age, and after selling his successful White Brothers business in 2000, he turned his attention towards restoring and collecting vintage motocross bikes. White's early years of Motocross Museum, located on his family's private property in Orange County, California, is not open to the public, but it has played host to motorcycle industry events, including product launches, professional racing media gatherings, as well as numerous charity fundraising efforts. Tom passed away in late 2017, and his family decided to keep the early years of Motocross Museum open. They plan to host industry and fundraising events there, just like Tom did. We hope that Tom's life story serves as an inspiration to everyone that fierce determination and goodwill can yield a life extraordinarily well lived. Next up, from Indianapolis, Indiana, is a friend of mine, Chris McCallister. On February 23, 2019, I was invited to a night of watching on any Sunday, enjoying pizza and to view his impressive collection. Chris's heart and roots go back to the early days of motocross in the U.S., where he, like most of us, ate, slept, and breathed motocross. Chris has established a very impressive 75-plus bike collection that specializes in Husqvarnas, including an extremely rare one of 16 built, only 3 known to exist today. It's a 1962 Husky 500 4-stroke built by Nessie Headland. Many of his bikes are very low-hour originals, but the ones that are restored are absolutely spot on. One of his Huskies is the bike used by Steve McQueen in the movie On Any Sunday. He has the Enduro Entry application, which is dated November the 6th, 1970, and signed by Steve McQueen. Next up, Rick Smith, born on the 23rd of August, 1966, nicknamed the Duncan Dutchman, is a Dutch former professional basketball player who spent his entire career with the Indiana Pacers of the National Basketball Association. I have had the pleasure to see Rick's museum when he lived in Zionsville, Indiana. Rick resides in Arizona now. Rick, since moving to Arizona, has downsized his collection. Rick always hosted the swap meet in Lebanon, Indiana, and it is such a great event for fans of vintage motorcycles to get a booth and sell their wares and see friends. I have had a booth at this event on several different occasions. One year I bought a 72 Hodaka 125 Wombat from Rick and completely restored this bike. And when I picked it up at his house, he took me to his barn to see his collection. The pictures are of some of the bikes at the swap meet. Smits has been a collector his whole life, and it is really neat to see all the great riding he is doing in Arizona.
The next gentleman's story is a man who will go down in motocross history as the man with the most toys wins. That man is Terry Good. Here is his story.
Terry first got interested in motocross in 1971. That was the year I graduated high school. Terry rode in the trails with his dad that year on a 1970 Yamaha HS1 90cc twin at the family summer house in northern Michigan. After reading motorcycle magazines for a year or so about motocross champions like Gary Jones, Joel Robert, and Roger DeCoster, Terry finally entered his first motorcycle race on Memorial Day, 1972 in Oscoda, Michigan. It was the roughest track Terry had ever ridden. Mike Hartwig was there. The Wilsons from K&W Cycle were also some of the best riders at the time were there. Terry got 15th overall in the 250cc class on a Yamaha 175 Enduro with a Webco expansion chamber on it. Terry was hooked. Terry sold the 175 and saved and bought a Yamaha DT2MX. Around that same time, a guy by the name of Barry Watkins, with the help of Don Jones, who's the father of Gary, was writing articles in Cycle Guide magazine about making your 250MX lightweight, similar to the factory Yamaha YZs that the Jones brothers were riding. And you could buy a lot of parts from the Jones Motocross in Walnut, California. Terry was making $1.90 an hour as a construction laborer in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Terry saved up every penny he made and bought every item Jones sold. Terry did everything he could to make his 1972 DT2MX Yamaha exactly like Gary Jones's factory YZ. From that point on, Terry was enamored with works bikes. Motocross at the time was the fastest growing motorsport in the United States, and it was not uncommon to have over 1,000 entries at a single motocross race. Terry's dream was to go to California, which was the motocross mecca of the United States, and ride at Saddleback and all of those other places he had read about in the magazines. Motocross in Southern California at that time was actually a part of the local culture. Celebrities such as Steve McQueen could be found racing at local races on a weekly basis, just blending in with everybody else. From San Fernando Valley to San Diego, you could race 4 or 5 times a week, and the competition was very tough. Terry planned with a few friends to Michigan to go to California, but they eventually bailed out. Terry kept racing in Michigan and Ohio and got pretty good, and finally turned pro in the spring of 1975. In 1975, Terry was 18 years old. He had a 1972 Chevy van, a 1975 Yamaha YZ250B, and $900 to his name. One day in June that year, he decided now was the time. He just had to do this. He loaded up the bike and told his parents he was going to California. Terry didn't know anybody there, but after 3 days of driving, he arrived at Saddleback Park in Orange County in total awe. It was a Saddleback Saturday where they ran 40-minute motos for the pros. Tim Hart was there on a Works monoshock. Rich Aristat was there too. These guys were fast. The competition at the pro level was insane, and you learned real fast. One day at Saddleback, Terry met a guy named Glenn Appling and got to be friends with him and his family. Next thing he knew, Glenn invited Terry to live with them at their home in Santa Ana. The Applings, some of the nicest people Terry ever met, became his family in California. Glenn Sr., his wife Betty, the 3 girls, Jan, Kim, and Candace, and Glenn Jr. They were totally into the local motocross scene. His son Glenn Jr. had a bike just like mine, and we did all the Saddleback, Carlsbad, CMC, and OCIR night races. At least 3 races a week. What a blast! Each race you would see Marty Smith, Pierre Carsmakers, and a whole host of factory riders with works bikes at local races. Terry remembers seeing Bob Hanna test the RM pre-production Suzukis. Bob Hanna was winning every single race, and no one knew who he was. Everyone thought he was just a guy that would come and go. Terry thought he was for real and was probably his first fan. Terry remembers hearing the announcer at Saddleback call him the Hurricane Hanna for the first time. The story of him getting that name in Hangtown or Florida is wrong. Terry stayed there for about 6 months and then back to Michigan to get ready for the 1976 125 Nationals. Terry planned on competing in this series with another friend he had met in California, Kim Blackseth. Kim loved fast things. As a young man, Kim was an avid and accomplished professional dirt bike racer, earning sponsorship from KTM. A devastating racing accident left him a quadriplegic for the remainder of his life. Even after the accident, Kim pursued his passion for speed. He took up rally racing, autocross, and amazingly enough, flying. He learned his private pilot license after soloing in his own 1947 Ercoupe. A life well lived. February 54 to November 22nd, 2019.